families. I'm Emily Penrod, your family relationship coach. And on this show, we examine 6 areas of health for families: emotional, financial, mental, physical, social, and spiritual. And this month we will be focusing on social well-being, a family's social well-being. And I am so excited and honored to have as my guest today, my good friend of several years. How many years,
Oh my
Jeannine?
God. Since well, I'm going to say like
About
4 years.
Yeah, of 4 years. Jeannine Rivers. And Jeannine Rivers is a suicide prevention educator, an author, a speaker. She also has her own show on Win-Win Women. We'll talk more about that later. And she's a certified mentor. So Jeannine, welcome.
Oh, thank you for having me.
I'm honored to have you be on my show. We've done a couple episodes before in the past, but this one is especially key because of your background. I knew you would be well qualified. And so we're going to talk about, there are 5 relationships that are very essential for a family's social well-being. And we're going to go through each in detail, but let's just list them at the first. The first one is the relationships between those family members. And then the second one is the relationships that they have with the extended family members, the family that don't live in the same home necessarily. The third is the relationships they have with any adults who are involved in the care of the children or elderly members of a family. It could be teachers, coaches. If you have a family member in a care center, it would be the caregivers there. The fourth is their relationship with money. And the fifth is their relationship with their community. How do they interact with their neighborhood, their church, congregation? How do they interact and give back within the broader society? So, Jeannine, let's start with the relationships within the family. What have you learned are some key components there?
The number one component is, well, the 2 ones that stick out to me are love and forgiveness.
Yes.
Because within the family unit, each of you have such different personalities, number one. And because of the different personalities, you think differently on different topics, on how things should be handled. You interact differently, with someone. And so that alone is very hard. And because of all of the various personalities, then you're going to have all these different emotions. And, sometimes they can clash. And then sometimes they can be loving and, it makes you feel secured. Abuse, then you have the emotional abuse, sometimes physical abuse. So what I have learned is one of the main things I have had to learn is to love and to forgive. And I find them very hard because I have been very wounded by family members. So I have learned that you still have to love. Forgiveness is for me and for the other person. But, for me, showing love is going to make me feel good and it's going to please God because he loves us regardless. And I've learned lately, Emmylou, is that it is important that we can't live up to everyone's expectations. You have so many people that feel you should be doing this, you should be doing that. You have opinions from everyone. And I have learned lately that it's very stressful trying to live according to someone else's expectations. And I
Oh,
spent most of my life doing that. It's okay to do it my way. My way is not going to agree with everyone else's. maybe my way may not even be right, but it's important that you let people follow their own journey.
Well, and I love your background. You lived it. I think that it has always been in your heart to music has always been in your heart. You've always
Yeah.
wanted to be a singer. And your
Yeah.
parents didn't necessarily encourage you on that path. In fact, I
Right.
think they discouraged you. And then
Yes.
as an adult, you decided this is my dream. I'm going to follow it. And you have a beautiful voice, Jeannine, and you've had
Oh, thank you.
success
Thank you.
in the music industry.
Thank you. Yes. Thank you so much for that.
And yet you have forgiven your parents. In fact, you
The
cared for
tougher.
them
Yes.
as they became elderly. That leads right into the relationships that we have, as we're raising our children. How do we connect with their grandparents, our parents? What
Mhm.
have you found in that area?
Wow. So basically, you're wanting to know, okay, Jeannine, how did you interact with your daughter, and how did you show her the example of dealing with her grandparents?
Yeah, and uncles and aunts. What kind of a relationship did you have with your extended family members as you were raising your daughter?
Wow. My relationship was very well, first of all, with my daughter, this is what I've learned. Valuable lessons I've learned, Emmylou. Because I did not see my aunts and uncles and my cousins that often when I was growing up. My family unit mainly consisted of my mom, my dad, and our church. So that's the way I raised my daughter. It was my mom and dad, and we were very involved with church, which means that show, showing my daughter the value of aunts and uncles and great great grandmothers and all that. I realize now that I didn't show the importance of that. And so sometimes when you do that, you don't value what you should, if that makes sense. I
Yeah.
grew up up until the age of 10. I saw our family all the time, Thanksgivings, Christmas, families. I was able during that time to feel that love and that structure of having my grandmother and my great grandmother, my great uncles and my great aunts. I got to live up under that umbrella. And then as I got older, like I said, our church became, it was a very big center of our family, which it should be, but it was to the extreme that I never was able to see my family.
Oh,
So, so
it
when
crowded out the extended family.
yes, yes, yes. And so then when my daughter came along, we were around them once in a while. And and I see now it has affected her because she still doesn't see them. When we have little gatherings, she'll come, but she's following, what's the word? She's following the example of what she had when she was growing up. So I don't hardly see her because she spends all her time with her church, her extended family. And I find it very hurtful, but I have to laugh because that's what she saw.
Oh, I
You know
see
what
what
I'm
you
saying?
mean. Yes, yes. When we have positive relationships with extended family members, like you did up until the age of 10,
Right.
there's this network. There's a rapport there. If
Right.
there's, if mom and dad aren't available, there's a grandparent or uncle,
Right.
aunt, cousin, someone. And I don't think it's possible for a child to have too many positive role models in their life.
I agree. I agree with that. So, so I was able to taste my grandmother's homemade apple pies and her 4-layer chocolate and coconut cake. I'm getting hungry. And then my great great grandmother's fried chicken and greens. And my daughter never got that opportunity. She really missed out. She knows nothing about the recipes.
And
You know,
it takes time to develop that rapport. It takes
right,
time spent together, interacting. If distance is a problem, then, phone calls,
right,
FaceTime.
right, right. So,
It takes effort to
right,
make those
right.
relationships.
So now that I've gotten older in Malou, I've taken all of those. I remember all those traditions. And so now family is extremely, it's important to me. I try to see them as much as I can. I mean, all my great uncles and my aunts, they're all gone. And so now we're into a newer generation. If I think about it, the generation, our last uncle is 88. So when he's gone, you know how it is, it moves down to the next
Yeah,
generation.
yeah.
Well, I'm under that next generation. And I'm like, ooh, this is kind of scary. But yeah,
But we need, that sense of heritage
right,
of, and they say children learn learn resilience when they see that their ancestors, their heritage overcame challenges, and then they'll feel like, well, I can too.
right, right. So yeah, so that's how, well, I love these questions because it really is helping me think and really analyze a lot of things. So I thank you for this.
And now you moving into the next area, you had a beautiful example of this. My background as a school teacher is that it's very important for parents to have a positive relationship with those adults who are involved in their children's lives. They're school teachers, coaches, music teachers,
Right,
church leaders, making sure that it's, you're all on the same page.
right.
But also, you have an example when when our parents get elderly, quite often we need to care for them.
Uh-huh.
You gave me a really good example of how to become involved in the caregivers for your dad.
Well, yes. My dad was quite difficult to take care of. So I had to work very closely with the staff. So I needed to take time, you know, I would go to my dad's, you know how in assisted living they do things on certain days.
Hmm.
They wash your clothes on one day, they, help you with they housekeep your, keep housekeeper comes a certain day. So I would always go on those specific days because I wanted to see how they were doing it. Turnover was very high. So every time I met one person that I really liked, the next person is gone. But I would get really involved. And then I realized that at certain points I was getting too involved. And I'll give you an example. So we need to get involved, but we also have to learn to take a step back. I liked my dad's clothes washed a certain way. Basically, Emmylou, the way that we were taught to wash them, and you probably taught your children, you separate the whites from the color.
Yeah, yeah.
No, they weren't doing that. They were just throwing everything in the washer, and they were stuffing all of the clothes in the washing machine, just like stuff, like literally packing them down
Whenever
in.
getting as much as they could. Oh dear.
So and it was hard for me to be patient. So I found myself, and this was probably very insulting to some of these young ladies because they were probably in their early 20s and they had children of their own. And here I am teaching them how to wash clothes.
You
I was,
know, that's a valid point because, and again, working with the parent teachers of your children,
right,
you want them, you know how you want it done, but
right.
you also have to respect and appreciate what they're doing. And
Yeah,
I,
that was
I
really
think most people respond much more favorably to appreciation than criticism. So was
true.
this one of those where you felt like you kind of had to step back and maybe his clothes weren't going to get washed quite the way you wanted?
How did you know? Yes. And then, you know what? because I got so stressed out. I couldn't be in two places at one time. I mean, I have a husband, I have my own house to keep clean, I have my own duties. And then and then one day my husband said, why don't you just bring his clothes home and wash them since you're going to go there? I'm like, but then I wasn't willing to do that either. I just said, okay, it is what it is. I mean, Emmylou, they would wash his clothes and they still would reek of urine. They weren't
Oh,
clean. That was really, really hard for me. But what was I going to do?
yeah, yeah. The option was, like you said, take it home and wash them yourself. And if that's not going to work, then it is a matter of, maybe appreciating, well, at least they feed him well. Well, at least,
Right,
but that you were aware of the care he was getting. And when
right,
we have a family member in that commitment, we want a positive relationship with anyone who's involved in
right.
raising our child or caring for someone who's not able to care for themselves.
Yes, yes, yes. This is very true. Very true. So,
Okay.
go
Oh,
ahead.
good.
So yes, it's important. Like you said, it's important to build those connections. I'm going to tell you what it reminded me of, and you just said it. I had to chuckle one day. I said, my dad said this to me. Well, you're making up for all the times we had to go to school and check on you with your teacher. And he said, now you're doing it for me. I'm like, I never thought about that. Yeah. I'd
Oh,
have my teachers' conferences, but they would be with the nurses. I'm like, yeah, life goes around.
it's a cycle, yes.
Yes, 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 it is.
And, and all of these relationships we've talked about so far in your area in as a suicide prevention educator, I know I've heard you talk about that suicide prevention is just a positive interaction.
Yes, yes, it is.
It's just
It,
letting someone know you care about them.
yes, yes. And this is what I've really learned. I didn't really realize what suicide prevention was. So when you hear that, people don't realize it's ongoing. And so when you hear suicide prevention, a lot of people think it's the act of stopping someone from not not attempting to take their own life in that one instance,
Keeping
where
them from jumping off the bridge.
right, just getting them
One
not to
day.
jump off that ledge, but really it is the cycle of knowing what to say to a person who is depressed, is not being afraid to ask the questions that need to be asked. It's getting involved with your politicians in the state you live, like letting them know we need more money for suicide prevention. It's really getting involved, having the walks, helping the families who have had someone die by suicide, helping them so it doesn't happen again. It's it's and it can be very controversial also. I mean, because you have people that have different viewpoints, and one of the biggest ones is gun control. People, there's so much controversy going on about that. But this is what I know. In the state of Wisconsin, thus far this year, there have been 25 deaths by suicide. I want you to know that 20 of them were done with a gun. So that's why people like in Prevent Suicide Wisconsin and these other places, it's small things like that. It's like, what do you do for people who have a right to carry that gun and use it for going hunting? And then what do you do to protect those people, they purchase them just because they know they're going to die by suicide. They want to try to take their own life, or it's those small things. That's suicide prevention. Suicide prevention is huge.
And it comes back to these relationships. So the relationships within our family,
Right.
we continue to connect with our teenagers, even when they get through that phase where they pull away and they don't want to talk to us. We keep nurturing and loving and encouraging and being
Yes.
aware of what's going on. And
Right.
our extended family members, and
Yes.
then out to the community. That's the fifth relationship. We're being involved in the community, making sure there are measures in place that protect everyone.
Yes.
And I've heard of just asking someone, can I keep your gun until you feel safe?
Yes. 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 That's huge. That's very huge. It really is. Mm-hmm. Yep.
So, and you've covered very beautifully how we can be involved in our community. I've known of families, and I love this, instead of having the big Thanksgiving dinner at home, that as a unit, as a family, they will go to a food shelter and they'll volunteer
Ah,
and they'll be
yeah.
serving the meal to the homeless. And then they get together afterwards and talk about it. And some families have made this a tradition that everyone feels so good about giving back, about serving others, that it's something they want to do every year. And some families for Christmas, rather than getting all the expensive gifts, will do a sub for Santa. They'll connect with, an agency, that is aware of families who need help, and they'll provide Christmas for another family. But I think it's that, this, first of all, this is a valuable way to teach children to give, to teach them that the blessing of service. And then we're raising a generation that will give back and work to improve society, to make the world a better place.
I like that. You're bringing back memories. Me and my daughter used to do that. On
Uh-huh.
Thanksgiving, we would go to the all men's shelter where it was nothing but the men, and then we would go to St. Ben's at a church. It was a church where people would get their meals, families, and we would go serve food there. Yeah, it was like fun. It's like, go there, let's eat their food. It wasn't that bad either. Yeah.
And just the reaching out, caring about everyone.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I think that does more to bring feelings of love and acceptance to a community than anything else.
Yes, and I'll tell you another thing that's a great way for to have the community come together is having I don't know, you probably know the proper name of it, a clothing bank where people, you just
Yes.
lots of clothes, and people just come and they go through it, and you just let them take shoes, purses, backpacks, clothes, coats.
You
If you
know,
take it,
another one of our show hosts, our Win-Win Women show host, runs, she calls it, she has a nonprofit called Mamavate. Now, this is for when, children outgrow their clothing so quickly. So
yes.
she has set up a number of locations where mother, she can bring the clothes that her children have outgrown and change them and exchange them for clothes that will fit her children.
Ah, okay.
And this again, this is community, we're social animals. We need to interact with each other.
Right.
And just, you know, I used to be so reticent and reluctant to talk to strangers. We teach our children that. But
Right.
sometimes a kind, friendly word to a stranger could make a huge difference.
Yes, it can. That is so true. I have a story about that. The area, in the area that I live in, there are a lot of homeless people, like the, downtown Shorewood, which is like 2 blocks away. But a lot of them hang out in the winter at our Pick and Save Metro Mart. And I figured out why. It's because they sleep in the parking structure. Well, that's where I would sleep if I was home. You don't have that wind, all the snow doesn't come in there. But um, getting to the point is that a lot, there's so many homeless people out there and in this area, and sometimes you're really afraid to speak to them because they're really um you can tell something is wrong with them mentally. So you don't know, do I say anything to them? Do I
It's
not?
an unknown quantity.
Right, right, right. Well, I just start, they stand right by the door when you're going in and coming out. And they ask you for money, and I used to ignore them because I'm like, I'm not going to say anything to them. Oh, they don't need that money. That was my attitude. They can get a job. That horrible, horrible. It's like I carry money with me just for a homeless person or somebody, or I could have it in my car in a cup. And so, you know, so my husband says I give him too much money, but I might give one $5, and that's like huge for them. Like, wow, $5. And they honestly go into the store and buy some fruit or buy something they want. So
Well, and I have wondered too, what does that do to anyone if everyone avoids eye contact with you? Even if you don't have any money to give, can you at least make eye contact and acknowledge their existence as a fellow
yes,
human being?
I like that. I like that. That is so true. Because how do we feel when a person doesn't give us eye contact? Like when you're walking down the street and they're like all happy, and then when they get by you, they put your head down. It's like, man, what I do?
We really can have a huge impact on each other.
Right.
Okay, we've got the one relationship, and it sounds the other relationships have been between people. But if you think of money and
Um,
the relationship we have, if you have, say, a man has been raised to be a saver, money is precious and you need to hold on to it. And he marries a woman who is a spender. Money is to be used, it's to get you what you want.
right.
Until they can communicate, get on the same page. And quite often, we sometimes feel like money is one of those taboo topics.
Yes.
But for family well being, if they can talk about money, they can have a positive relationship with it, treat it as a tool, plan how they're going to use it, how they're going to use it to reach their goals.
I like that idea, but can I tell you how it was in my household?
Yes, do.
My dad was the spender, and he would like to, his love language was giving,
Uh-huh.
like, buying stuff, taking everybody out to dinner from church, like a great big group of people, and he pays for the meals. He liked to drive nice cars, and he liked to have the best of everything because he grew up really poor. Well, my mom grew up really poor too, but they married each other. This was both of their second marriages. So my mom had already been she was divorced from her first husband, so she was a single parent for a while and she was on welfare. So the moral of the story is she was a saver.
Uh-huh.
So she was a saver. She said a woman should always have her own money for a rainy day. That's She called it mad money. And I'm like, mad. She said, you always should have your own.
Yeah. Yeah.
So she always had that idea. So she would save. But yet she liked to spend. She liked new clothes, but they were always from the Goodwill. So my mother, she didn't have a bank account, I don't believe. I don't think she did, because you know what, Emmylou, she used to save her money and she would cut a hole in the carpet and hide the money under the carpet. she would dig a hole in her plants and have the money in a plastic baggie. She would take the bottom of a curtain and break the seam open and roll up the money and hide it. She used to, so when she passed away, me and my daughter went to look for the money.
Because
We
it
were
was
like stomping
scattered
around
throughout
on
the house.
yeah, we were stumping around on the, the floor, and we found it, and it was in a plant.
Yeah.
Yeah. So my mother was the saver, my dad was the spender. And so what I learned from that, from my mother, now I was in banking for over 20 years, but I wasn't a saver. I was a spend. I never kept a checkbook because I was able to check my account online at the bank. But I would spend until one day I realized, I'm getting older. I really need to start changing my attitude about money. So I used to, I had a savings account for my daughter, and we would save, and I taught her how to save. So I kind of looked at my mom and dad, but then as I got in banking, I said, there needs to be more happening, so saving for college and doing those things. So I was able to do that. But that's not what my parents, they were quite interesting.
Well,
And my
and
grandmother never saved. My grandmother never saved.
we tended to follow the same pattern our parents did. We
Right,
learned from their example. But
right.
had that positive relationship, recognizing using money as a tool and getting everyone on the same page is, it relieves stress in the home. So money isn't always a source of contention. And it allows you to be able to do the things you want to do when you've
Yes,
managed your money wisely. All of these are important.
yes,
Well, okay, let's talk some more about your show. You're on Saturday mornings,
yes,
7 p.m. Pacific, 8, I know it's 8 in Mountain Time, my time zone, 9 in Central, and 10 in Eastern. Tell us
yes.
about your show.
The name of my show is Jeannine's Voice. And I love the title of my show, and it gives me an opportunity to just really talk from the heart, and I'm very transparent in what I talk about. My human emotion towards the issue, how I've been treated by others, and what I've learned and what I should be doing. Um, very, very controversial topics, and I've gotten in trouble with family members on my show, about my show on forgiveness, and then on my show regarding family relationship. I got in trouble. My family wouldn't speak to me. But can I say something? That's what I want. When I
You
talk
you you established a boundary.
right, so that's why it's called Jeannine's Voice. So, basically, I just, you know, come up with topics that I believe that people have a hard time talking about. They never think to talk about them. And I always title my shows in a way that makes you go, I wonder what that's about. I don't give it away in the title. Normally I don't. So it's Jeannine's Voice, and where I just, talk about the topics, whatever a topic that I say, ooh, I really want to talk about that. And I come, and people come, and we have a discussion about it. And, you know, it's nice to see how many people are, what their viewpoints are. Some people will agree, some people won't, but that's what makes the discussion so
I've
special.
been on your show. You have some really good discussions. That's
Don't
true.
I? And like I said, they're very controversial. But I tell the truth, don't I, Emmylou?
Yes, you do. And you do tackle those topics that that some people are afraid to address.
Right,
So
right.
if they go to your link, they can also find the link to your website, your social media pages,
Yes.
and don't you have more resources on your website?
Yes, I have more resources on my website. I have some classes that I'm working on, webinars that I, want to start inviting people to. So yes. Mhm.
Well, thank you, Jeannine. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise.
Thank you.
Oh, as always, I love talking to you. So, and to my audience, join me again next week at the same time. Until then, love yourself and love your family. Let's make the world a better place by strengthening families. This is Emmylou Penrod with healingyourfamilies.com.